Captain Marcus Chen sat in the worn leather pilot's seat of his aging freighter, the Meridian, staring at the endless darkness of space. His calloused hands moved across the controls with practiced precision, checking fuel levels and cargo manifests for the 100th time that day. The ship groaned and creaked around him like an old man waking from a long sleep. Through the viewport, asteroids drifted silently past, their surfaces scarred and pitted from countless collisions over millions of years. Marcus was a man in his mid-40s, with weathered skin that told stories of hard work and harder choices. His dark eyes had the tired look of someone who had learned long ago that the universe did not care about his problems. A faded photo of two smiling children sat taped to the dashboard, Emma and Tyler, his reason for everything. They were safe at the colony, waiting for his return with supplies and credits. That was all that mattered to him now. The alarm cut through his thoughts suddenly, a sharp beeping sound that made Marcus sit up straight in his seat. His navigation officer, Vex, a tall alien creature with rough blue skin and 3 fingers on each hand, turned from his station with a concerned expression. "Captain, we have a distress beacon," Vex said, his voice carrying the clicking undertones of his species. "Dead ahead, about 200 kilometers. Asteroid field sector 7. Marcus frowned. Distress beacons meant trouble, and trouble meant complications. In his experience, complications meant wasted time and lost profits. He reached for his coffee, now cold and bitter from sitting untouched for the past hour. "Ignore it," Marcus said flatly. "We're on schedule. The colony is waiting for these supplies." Vex hesitated, then spoke again. "Captain, the beacon signature is XY Antherian. Royal class if my readings are correct. That ship would be worth a fortune in salvage parts alone." Marcus paused, the cold coffee cup halfway to his lips. He knew Vex was right. A Royal XY Antherian vessel meant advanced technology, rare materials, valuable components. It also meant danger. The XY Antherian Empire did not take kindly to outsiders interfering in their affairs. But the crew needed supplies too, and the colony could wait another few hours. "Plot a course," Marcus said finally. "But we're just looking. No salvage operations until we know what we're dealing with." As the Meridian changed direction, heading toward the asteroid field, the other crew members began to murmur among themselves. Most of them were hardened spacers who had learned that curiosity in space was often fatal. But they trusted Marcus. He had kept them alive this long, which was more than most captains managed in this business. The asteroids grew larger as they approached, massive chunks of rock and metal that had been floating in space since the beginning of time. Marcus piloted the ship carefully through the field, his hands steady on the controls despite the tension he felt building in his chest. Something felt wrong about this situation, but he could not say exactly what. Then they saw it. The escape pod was small, sleek, and clearly expensive. It was wedged between 2 large asteroids, its hull scorched and damaged. Smoke still drifted from a crack near the rear section. Whatever had happened to this pod had happened recently. Getting a faint life signs reading, Vex reported, his 3 fingers moving quickly across his console. "There is someone alive in there, Captain." "Barely." Marcus did not hesitate this time. He ordered the ship to dock with the pod, and within minutes he was suited up and floating through space toward the damaged vessel. His suit lights cut through the darkness, illuminating the damage more clearly. This was no accident. This pod had been fleeing something, running hard and fast until it crashed. The escape pod's hatch was damaged but not sealed. Marcus forced it open with effort, and immediately activated the internal lights. What he saw inside made him catch his breath. A young woman lay crumpled on the floor of the pod. She was not human. Her skin shimmered with faint bioluminescent patterns that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of her breathing. Her features were elegant, almost delicate, with large dark eyes and hair that appeared to be made of fine silver threads. She wore torn and scorched armor that looked expensive and formal. She could not have been more than 18 years old, maybe younger. Marcus checked her vital signs carefully. She was alive but barely. Her pulse was weak, her breathing shallow. He lifted her gently in his arms and began the slow journey back to the Meridian, moving carefully in the low gravity of the asteroid field. Inside the medical bay of the Meridian, Marcus worked quickly but gently, removing her damaged armor and cleaning her wounds. Several cuts and bruises covered her body, but nothing seemed life-threatening. She was simply exhausted and malnourished. He wrapped her in clean blankets and connected her to the ship's medical scanner, which would monitor her condition while she slept. He was about to leave when her eyes suddenly opened. She stared at him with wild fear in her dark gaze, her breathing becoming rapid and panicked. She tried to sit up, but Marcus placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Easy," he said softly. "You are safe now. You are aboard my ship. My name is Marcus Chen." The young woman's fear seemed to ease slightly, though her eyes remained alert and wary. She looked around the medical bay as if trying to understand where she was, then her gaze returned to Marcus. "Where?" she began, her voice hoarse from disuse. "Where is your emperor? What sector is this?" She paused, then added urgently, "Please, you must not tell anyone I am here. They must not find me. Please." Her words were strange, her accent unlike anything Marcus had ever heard. But her desperation was unmistakable. Whatever she was running from, she was terrified of being found. "You are safe," Marcus repeated, though he had no idea if that was actually true. "Rest now. We can talk when you are stronger." As the young woman's eyes slowly closed and she drifted back into sleep, Marcus could not shake the feeling that his simple salvage run had just become very complicated indeed. Sela woke to the sound of laughter. It was a strange sound to her, unfamiliar and somehow comforting at the same time. She opened her eyes slowly, her body still weak from the ordeal of her escape. The medical bay was quiet and clean, nothing like the rigid, sterile environments she had known her entire life. Sunlight, artificial sunlight from the ship's systems, streamed through a small window, casting warm patterns across the walls. She sat up carefully, testing her strength. Her muscles ached, but the pain was manageable now. Most of the cuts and bruises had been treated with medical gel that had significantly reduced the swelling. Through the open doorway of the medical bay, she could hear the voices again. A man's voice, deep and calm, and the voices of children, high and playful. Curiosity pulled Sela from the bed. She wrapped a loose shirt around her shoulders, something Marcus had left for her, and made her way slowly down the narrow corridor of the ship. The Meridian was nothing like the grand warships of her father's fleet. It was smaller, warmer somehow, with exposed pipes and wiring running along the walls. The air smelled different too, lived in and real, not filtered and artificial like the palace. The voices were coming from the common area. Sela paused in the doorway, watching the scene before her. Marcus sat at a table with two human children, a girl of about 12 and a boy perhaps a year or two younger. They were playing some kind of game with small carved pieces, moving them across a checkered board. The children were laughing, teasing their father about his strategy. "You always play that move, Dad," the girl said, her eyes bright with amusement. "Tyler always beats you when you do." Marcus laughed, a genuine sound that came from deep within his chest. "Then perhaps your old father is not as clever as he thinks." The boy, Tyler, grinned and made another move on the board. "Check," he announced proudly. It was only then that Marcus noticed Sela standing in the doorway. His expression shifted immediately, concern replacing the playfulness. He stood up from the table. "You should be resting," he said, but his voice was gentle, not commanding. "I am well enough," Sela replied. Her voice still sounded strange to her own ears, the English words formed perfectly but with an accent that did not belong to any human language. "I heard sounds. I wanted to investigate." Emma, Marcus's daughter, stood up from the table with curiosity written all over her face. "You're awake." "I'm Emma. That's my brother Tyler. And you're really pretty. Are you okay?" Sela had never been complimented in such a casual, genuine way before. In her father's palace, compliments were always formal, always political. She did not know how to respond. Thank you," she said finally. "I am Sela." "That's a cool name," Tyler said, abandoning the chess game to come closer. "Are you really an alien?" "I've never met an actual alien before." Sela glanced at Marcus, uncertain how much she should reveal. He gave her a small nod of encouragement, letting her know it was safe to speak. "Yes," Sela said. "I am from the Xyantherian Empire. It is very far from here." Over the next 3 days, Sela began to understand what a normal family life could be. Marcus would wake her each morning with food, simple food prepared with his own hands in the ship's small kitchen. Eggs and bread and fruits from the ship's hydroponic garden. She watched in fascination as he cooked, moving through the process without any formal training or assistance. On her world, servants prepared all food. She had never seen someone simply decide to cook for themselves. Emma and Tyler took Sela under their wing, showing her around the ship and explaining how everything worked. They taught her human games and songs. Tyler was particularly excited when Sela showed interest in the chess game. She learned the rules quickly, her mind sharp and strategic from years of formal education. By the third game she was beating Tyler consistently. "How are you so good at this?" Tyler asked, frustrated but impressed. "I have always enjoyed strategy," Sela said carefully. My teachers taught me many games of logic and planning. What she did not tell him was that she had been trained since childhood to think several moves ahead, to anticipate threats, to control every variable. But with Tyler it felt different. He did not want her to win to prove superiority. He wanted to challenge her, and when he lost, he laughed and congratulated her anyway. It was a concept Sela found beautiful and completely alien to her experience. Marcus watched his children bond with Sela, and he felt a strange protective instinct grow in his chest. There was something lost about her, something broken that went deeper than physical injuries. The way she moved sometimes as if expecting to be commanded. The way she asked permission before touching things. The careful distance she maintained until she was certain it was safe. One evening, as Sela helped Marcus prepare dinner while Emma and Tyler did homework exercises at the table, she asked him a question that had been troubling her. "Why did you rescue me?" she asked quietly. Marcus continued chopping vegetables, thinking carefully about his answer. "Because you needed help and I could provide it. It is that simple." "On my world," Sela said slowly, "people do not help others without expecting something in return. There is always a transaction, always a price." "That sounds exhausting," Marcus said. Sela considered this. "It is all I have ever known." But as the days passed and no rescue came, as she fell into the rhythm of life aboard the Meridian, Sela began to understand something new. She began to feel something unfamiliar, a sense of belonging. Not because she was valuable or useful, but simply because she existed and Marcus's family had chosen to include her. Then on the fourth day Vex's voice crackled over the intercom, cold and urgent. "Captain to the bridge. Now." Marcus left immediately. Sela felt her stomach tighten with familiar dread. Through the small viewport near the common area she could see what had alarmed Vex. A massive shape was moving through space heading directly toward them. A warship. HFY warship. They had found her. Marcus moved to the bridge with quick, purposeful steps. The moment he arrived, Vex pointed to the scanner display. The massive HFY battlecruiser was closing in on them, moving with the kind of speed and precision that came from military training. There was no hiding now. There was nowhere to run. "How long until they reach us?" Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the fear building in his chest. 20 minutes, maybe less," Vex replied. "They are not responding to any hails, Captain. They are just coming." Marcus turned to face the viewport, watching the distant shape grow larger. He had known this moment might come from the first second he pulled Sela from that escape pod. He had ignored the warning signs because something in his heart had refused to leave a frightened young woman to die alone in space. Now that decision was about to cost him everything. He found Sela in the common area, standing very still, staring out the window at the approaching warship. She turned when she heard his footsteps, and Marcus saw the fear in her eyes, a deep, primal fear that went beyond the physical danger of the moment. "They have found me," she said quietly. It was not a question. "Yes," Marcus said. There was no point in lying. "But we are not going to panic. Sit down. We need to talk." Sela sat at the table, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Emma and Tyler had been sent to their quarters, confused and frightened by the sudden change in the ship's atmosphere. Marcus pulled up a chair across from Sela. "I need you to tell me everything," he said. "Who are you really? Why are they hunting you?" For a long moment Sela said nothing. Her luminescent markings seemed to pulse with her racing heartbeat. Then finally she began to speak. "My name is Sela Vex," she said, each word coming slowly, carefully. "I am the crown princess of the HFY Empire. My father is Emperor Voss III, ruler of 17 star systems and 300 planets." Marcus felt his stomach drop. A princess. He had rescued a princess. That meant the warship heading toward them was not just military, it was official. It represented the full power and authority of an empire. "Why were you running?" Marcus asked. "Because I was going to be married," Sela said, her voice hollow. "Not because I had chosen someone or fallen in love. My father had arranged it as a political alliance. The man I was to marry is Lord Kesax, a warlord who controls vast military resources. By marrying me, my father would secure his power and ensure the stability of the empire for generations." "And you did not want to marry him," Marcus said. "I have never even met him," Sela replied. "But I have studied reports about him. He is brutal. He has destroyed entire civilizations that resisted his rule. He keeps his wives locked away, unable to make any decisions about their own lives. I was going to be a prisoner in a gilded cage, and I would have no choice in the matter." She looked directly at Marcus, and he saw the depth of her desperation. On my world, the royal family has no freedom. We exist to serve the empire. My entire life has been controlled: what I eat, what I wear, what I think, who I speak to. Every moment has been scheduled, every word monitored. When I found the escape pod, I made a choice. For the first time in my life, I chose something for myself. I chose to run. So your father sent that warship to bring you back, Marcus said. Yes. To him, I am not a person. I am an asset. I am a valuable piece on the game board of his empire. I have embarrassed him by running, by refusing my duty. He will bring me back and he will punish me. And then he will force me to marry Lord Kessax anyway. My rebellion will only delay the inevitable. Marcus stood up and paced the small common area, his mind working through the impossible situation. If he turned Sela over to the Exwantherian Empire, she would be condemned to a life of servitude and abuse. But if he refused, he was effectively declaring war on an entire empire. The Meridian would be destroyed and everyone aboard would die. There has to be another way, he said almost to himself. There is not, Sela said quietly. You have shown me kindness, Marcus. You have shown me what freedom feels like. Your children have shown me that families can be places of genuine love, not just political arrangements. I am grateful for these days with you. But I cannot drag you down with me. I will go with them. You will survive. No, Marcus said firmly. He stopped pacing and looked at Sela directly. No, we are not doing that. He moved to the communications console and began entering codes, accessing the public broadcast channels. Vex looked up from his station in alarm. Captain, what are you doing? Something crazy, Marcus said. Something that has almost no chance of working. But it is the only move I have left. He opened the channel and began to record a message. His voice was steady and clear as he explained everything. Sela's identity, her forced marriage, Lord Kessax's documented war crimes, the political manipulation by the Exwantherian Empire. He sent the message across all open frequencies, broadcasting it to neutral colonies, independent stations and rival factions within the Exwantherian sphere of influence. What have you done? Sela whispered. I have made your story the galaxy's business, Marcus said. I have invoked the Galactic Covenant on political asylum. Your father cannot simply take you now without acknowledging that you have rights as a person, not just as a political piece. The battlecruiser's weapons came online, but they did not fire. Instead, a message crackled over the communications system. The Exwantherian commander's voice was cold and controlled, but there was something else in it too: uncertainty. Freighter Meridian, you have made a grave error. A diplomatic vessel is being dispatched. Prepare for immediate boarding. Marcus looked at Sela, and for the first time since they had met, he smiled. Hold on, he said. This is going to get interesting. The diplomatic shuttle descended toward the Meridian with careful precision. It was smaller than a warship, designed for negotiation rather than combat, but its sleek silver hull still conveyed power and authority. Marcus watched it approach through the viewport, his hands steady despite the racing of his heart. They are coming aboard, Captain, Vex announced from his station. 3 Exwantherian officials and 4 armed guards. Marcus turned to Sela, who stood rigid beside him, her luminescent markings flickering with anxiety. Listen to me, he said quietly. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, you are not alone. Do you understand? You have people here who care about you. Sela nodded, but fear still dominated her expression. She had lived her entire life under the authority of the Empire. The idea of standing against it seemed impossible. The airlock hissed open, and the Exwantherian delegation entered. The lead figure was an elderly female with scarred skin and eyes that had clearly seen countless conflicts. Her armor was decorated with medals and insignia that Marcus did not recognize but instinctively understood represented power and experience. She introduced herself as Ambassador Vrel. I am here on behalf of Emperor Voss III, Ambassador Vrel said, her voice carrying the same clicking undertones as Vex species. You harbor a fugitive of the Empire. This is an act of war against the Exwantherian Empire. Surrender the princess immediately, and we may allow your crew to live. Marcus gestured toward the conference room. Ambassador, I believe we should discuss this more privately. Surely someone of your experience understands the complexity of the situation. Ambassador Vrel studied him for a long moment, then nodded sharply to her guards. They remained in the corridor as the ambassador, Marcus, and Sela entered the small conference room. Marcus did not sit. He began to speak calmly, laying out his position like a skilled negotiator, which in many ways he was. Years of trading across different species and cultures had taught him how to read people and find the common ground. "Ambassador, I understand your position," Marcus began. The princess ran away. "Your emperor needs her back. But I have already broadcast the story across the galaxy. Every neutral station, every independent colony, every rival faction in the Exwantherian sphere now knows that your empire was forcing the princess into marriage with a man known for his brutality. That is a matter of internal empire politics," Ambassador Vrel said coldly. "It does not concern the wider galaxy." "It does now," Marcus replied. "Because I made it public. And I invoked the Galactic Covenant on Political Asylum. Which, if I remember correctly, your empire signed 40 years ago." The ambassador's expression hardened. She clearly understood what Marcus had done and how it limited her options. "The covenant applies to political prisoners and refugees," Ambassador Vrel said. "The princess is neither. She is a member of the royal family who has violated her duties to the state." "A princess who was being forced into marriage against her will," Marcus countered. "That sounds like a human rights violation to me. And to anyone watching the broadcast I sent." Sela watched this exchange with growing wonder. Marcus was not threatening the ambassador. He was not trying to overpower her militarily. He was simply using her own laws and her own pride against her. It was a strategy completely foreign to everything she had been taught about power and authority. "You are a simple freighter captain," Ambassador Vrel said, a hint of contempt in her voice. "You do not understand the forces you are interfering with." "No," Marcus agreed. "But I understand people. And I understand that you are too intelligent to start a war over something that will embarrass your emperor far more than simply letting the princess go." The ambassador stood and walked to the small viewport, looking out at the warship that hung in space nearby. For a long moment she said nothing. "My emperor will not accept this," she said finally. "Your emperor has already shown he will not fire on this ship," Marcus said. "Because the moment he does, he proves everything I said about the brutality of his regime. He proves that he values control over the life and happiness of his own daughter." Ambassador Vrel turned back to face Marcus, and for just a moment, he saw something like respect in her ancient eyes. "You have put me in an impossible position," she said. "I have given you a way out," Marcus replied. "Grant Sela asylum status. Let her leave the empire. Tell your emperor that the political situation has become too complicated to resolve through force. Save face for him and for yourself." The ambassador looked at Sela for the first time, really looked at her. "And what will you do, princess? Where will you go?" Sela's voice was quiet but steady when she spoke. "I will stay with Captain Marcus. I will work to build understanding between our people. I will show that humans and Exwantherians can coexist in peace and mutual respect." "Noble words," Ambassador Vrel said. "But you understand what this means? Your father will disown you. You will no longer be considered part of the royal family. You will have no claim to the throne, no wealth, no status." "I will have freedom," Sela said simply. "I will have choice. That is worth more than all the gold on all the worlds." The ambassador was silent for a very long time. Finally she moved toward the door. "I will need to consult with the warship's commander. This decision is not mine alone to make." 2 hours passed like an eternity. Marcus and Sela remained in the conference room waiting. Emma and Tyler had been told what was happening, and they sat quietly with Sela, their young presence somehow comforting. Finally, the communication system activated. It was the voice of the warship's commander, formal and controlled. "The princess is hereby granted asylum status under the Galactic Covenant," the commander said. "She is no longer property of the Exwantherian Empire. This matter is concluded." There was a pause, and then another message came through, this one on a private channel meant only for Marcus. It was Ambassador Vrel's voice. "You have won this day, Captain. But understand that you have also changed something. The princess's brother is listening to your broadcast. He is beginning to question many things about our empire. Perhaps one day people like him will change the system from within. You should know that you have done more than save one life today." The warship began to move away, turning slowly and heading back toward Exwantherian space. On the meridian, Marcus, Sela, and the children stood together watching it go. "We did it," Emma whispered. "We are just beginning," Sela said, looking at Marcus with gratitude and hope shining in her luminescent eyes. 1 month had passed since the Meridian docked at Kepler Station, a neutral trade hub that orbited a peaceful planet in the outer colonies. The station was a massive structure of interconnected modules and docking bays, home to thousands of beings from dozens of different species. It was a place where no single empire held power, where refugees could find safety and new opportunities. Sela stood in front of a mirror in the small apartment that Marcus had rented for her, looking at herself with wonder. She wore simple clothes now, nothing formal or restrictive. A blue shirt and comfortable pants. Her luminescent markings seemed brighter somehow, as if they were responding to her newfound peace. She was no longer Crown Princess Sela Vex. She was simply Sela, and that was enough. The apartment was small but warm. Through the window she could see the planet below, blue and green and beautiful. She had never really looked at a planet before. On her world, everything had been about duty and schedules. Beauty was something to be appreciated only if it served a political purpose. A knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. She opened it to find Marcus standing there, holding a small device in his hands. He was smiling, genuinely happy, in a way she had learned to recognize over the past month. "Are you ready?" he asked. "Yes," Sela said. "Though I am still uncertain about this work." Marcus led her through the corridors of Kepler Station toward the Cultural Center, a new building that had been constructed specifically to promote understanding between different species. The center had hired Sela as an educator and cultural liaison, one of the first Exwantherians to work in such a capacity outside of imperial control. The cultural center was bright and welcoming, filled with displays and interactive exhibits. Students of various ages and species moved through the halls, learning about different cultures and ways of life. Sela's job was to teach people about Exwantherian culture while also learning about theirs in return. It was the opposite of everything she had been trained to do. Instead of controlling information, she was sharing it. Instead of hiding the truth, she was revealing it. Her first class of the day was a group of young human children, the same age as Tyler and Emma. They sat in a circle, their eyes wide with curiosity as Sela walked into the room. "Today," she said, "I will teach you about my homeworld and how my people live. But I want you to ask me questions. Do not be shy. Understanding comes from asking, not from accepting what you are told." A small girl raised her hand. "Why do your markings glow? Are you sick?" Sela laughed, a genuine laugh that came easily now. "No, I am not sick. The markings are part of who I am. They glow brighter when I am happy or excited. Watch." She thought about Marcus and his children, about the feeling of being safe and cared for, and her markings flared brilliantly. The children gasped in delight. For the next hour they asked her about everything. How did Exwantherians eat? How did they sleep? What was the most important thing in her culture? The last question was the hardest to answer because the truth was complicated. "For a long time," Sela said carefully, "my people believed that duty was the most important thing. That individuals should sacrifice their own happiness for the good of the empire. But now, I think we are beginning to understand that happiness and freedom are also important. That people cannot serve well if they are not allowed to be themselves." After the class ended, Sela met Marcus and his children at a small restaurant near the station's central plaza. Emma was telling Sela about her new school, where she was making friends with children from many different worlds. Tyler was quieter as usual, but he smiled when Sela arrived. "How was your class?" Marcus asked, setting down bowls of food in front of everyone. "It was good," Sela said. The children asked many questions. "I think they will help their families understand that Exwantherians are not so different from other beings." As they ate, Marcus received a message on his communication device. His expression grew serious as he read it. Sela felt a moment of fear. Perhaps the Empire had changed its mind, perhaps they were coming back for her. But when Marcus looked up, he was smiling. "It is from your brother," he said. "Crown Prince Vess. He says he has read the broadcast of your story and has been thinking about many things. He says he is working to change some of the policies in the Empire that limit freedom and individual choice. He thanks you for being brave enough to show him what was possible." Sela felt tears form in her luminescent eyes. She had not expected to hear from her family again. She had accepted that she was cut off from them forever. But this message meant that perhaps change was possible, that perhaps her sacrifice was not in vain. That evening Marcus and Sela walked on one of the station's observation decks, looking out at the stars. Emma and Tyler were with friends, enjoying their new life in this place of peace and possibility. "Do you regret it?" Sela asked Marcus. "Your life was simple before I came. Now it is complicated. You have responsibilities you did not have before." Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. "When I found you in that escape pod," he said finally, "I made a choice. I could have left you there. It would have been simpler. But simple is not always better. Complicated can be beautiful if it is complicated with people you care about." He took her hand gently. "My life is better now because you are in it. Emma and Tyler are better because they know you. And you are better because you chose to be free. That is worth all the complications in the universe. Sela looked at their joined hands, at the lights of the distant stars, at the endless possibilities that lay before them. For the first time in her life she felt truly at peace. She was no longer a princess bound by duty. She was a person choosing her own path. What happens now? She asked. Marcus smiled. Now we keep building this life together. One day at a time. One choice at a time. That is how real freedom works. As they stood together watching the stars, Sela's markings glowed softly with contentment. She had lost everything she had known, but in losing it she had found something far more valuable. She had found home. Not a palace, not a title, but a place where she was loved for who she truly was. And that was everything.